Hi there guys, welcome back to the channel. You're joining me on a very cold and brisk morning down in Devon. I mean, I'm sure it's colder elsewhere, but I'm not quite used to it. But it doesn't really matter too much because today I'm in a car which I just cannot get over the value of. It is a Jaguar XJ long wheelbase, so it's the 3-litre TDV6. It's one of the early ones, so it's 2010, and it's producing 275 brake horsepower. It's got the 8-speed ZF transmission, which I've mentioned in previous videos, is a great transmission, and I genuinely cannot get over the value of this car. It came in part exchange against the Audi A8, which I've recently done a video on, so do check that one out as well. And it was the perfect car to come in part exchange against that car because they're of a similar ilk. They're far enough apart that you can really appreciate the upgrades that the A8 gives you. But for value, this, I can't get over it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's done 124,000 miles, but then again, it's 13 years old, so is it really, too far out there? I don't think it is. The service history is fantastic. It's got a stamp on every year. It's also had some of the bigger jobs done, which are quite common for these type of cars. So it's had the inlet manifolds replaced, had the timing belt done, as well as the fuel pump belt, which is one that a lot of people tend to forget. But yeah, it's had all those bits done. It's been very clearly loved by its previous owner. And the previous owner, he was only a young lad, to be fair, a couple of years younger than I am. But obviously just likes his big executive cars. And it doesn't get much bigger and more executive than a Jaguar XJ long wheelbase. Obviously being a long wheelbase, it does have quite a considerable length to it. But I think that only plays into favour of the comfort that it gives. It's also the portfolio spec, which is they're kind of like top of the range in terms of the models that they go to with the portfolio on Jaguars. So a lot of this stuff comes as standard, which is obviously not a complaint at all. Got the heated steering wheel, which as I mentioned is quite brisk outside, so very pleased about that. I'm currently getting a massage in the seat, so it's got the heated and ventilated massage seats in the front, as well as also heated and ventilated seats in the back. Also has the tables on the back of the front two chairs, so the rear passengers have got tables. It's got the rear blinds on the doors and also the electric rear blind in the rear window. It's got the nice digital display. It's got the dual view screen on this here as well, although I don't think it's current with the analog/digital TV. I don't think you'll actually pick up any TV channels on it, but you can still play DVDs via. And playing a DVD, obviously, the passenger can watch it whilst the driver can see satellite navigation. So that's been around for some time, but it's still a very cool feature, even in today's kind of modern tech and everything like that. So I really quite like it. I personally am a big fan of the colour combination. So it's in a metallic liquid silver on the exterior, and it's got what they call their navy interior with quite a light wood. Normally I don't like light woods, but the pattern on this I think is beautiful. Also got the Bowers and Wilkins sound system, and that still holds to today's kind of tech and everything. It's a fantastic sound system. So yeah, I mean, it come in part exchange. Normally I would trade it out because it's a 2010 with 124,000 miles. They're great cars, but it's not the usual elk that I have. But this one come in and it's just astounding as to the condition that it's in. It's obviously been well cared for, as previously mentioned. The alloys are unmarked, the tyres are all relatively fresh because they've still got the little nubbins on them. The body works very clean for its age. Don't get me wrong, you do have the odd stone chip and bits on the front, but for a used car, just in exceptional condition, and they come in really clean as well. I mean, the amount of cars that I get part exchanged in and they're just disgusting and you have to spend all day cleaning them, but this is a real breath of fresh air when it come in. And as I say, the chap who part exchanged it, he bought the Audi A8, which again is in line with that executive saloon. So I do enjoy dealing in these type of cars. And then I used it myself for a couple of days, and I'm still using it now. I mean, it is advertised, it is for sale, and it's at $7,995, so £8,000 for a car that gives you this level of class, elegance. The road presence is beautiful. The drive itself is ever so quiet and it's just reactive. You wouldn't think it had done 124,000 miles at all. Just incredibly pleased with it, I really am. And as I say, I wouldn't ordinarily go on with it, but it's one of those ones where I couldn't say no. I was like, yeah, gotta have that on the forecourt, and I don't think it'll be here for too long, so which is why I'm kind of rushing to do a video on it. But just what a place to be. Picked up some friends last night, they sat in the back and just amazed with the leg room they've got, because of course I mean, the standard XJ's got plenty of leg room, but the long wheelbase over again is just another level of comfort. The only things that it's missing in terms of the specification, you could get the rear entertainment, so that was the TVs and the rear headrest, which this one doesn't have. But again, it may not have been too relevant in the sense that I think digital and the analog aspects of it no longer kind of work. So I don't think you can pick up any channels, but it's still quite a cool thing to have. But they got the heated seats on because it's, you know, winter, it's that time of year, and just thoroughly enjoyed the drive, and that's what this car's all about. It's about providing that essence of luxury, and I think it definitely does that. It definitely nails that on the head. And being 275 brake, it's not really a slow poke either. You know, you can really accelerate when you need to. I'm not saying that you can go through the corners quite as quick because it is a long wheelbase, but certainly plenty of performance there. I just think, what else do you get for 7,995? If you was to put a private plate on this, if you're into that type of thing, and you were to hide the fact that it was a 2010 car, no one's to know. You'd think you'd be driving around in a £40,000 car. I mean, new, it would have, I don't know what the list price would have been, but it would have been quite substantial being the portfolio and given the spec that it's got. But just, I genuinely cannot go over the value of it. I've messaged friends of mine saying, check out this car and look how much car you get for the value. I never try and sell my friends' cars, don't really want to, but I always like to show them the cool cars that come in and the value that they can exceed, and this is no exception. When you start looking at the finer details, you can maybe tell that it's an older car. For example, the material that they've used on the buttons, for whatever reason, seems to be a little bit flaking away. So these buttons here, they do look a little bit worn on the steering wheel, and not necessarily picked at, but I think it's just whatever film that they put over the top. It's very common. I see it all the time with the Jaguar Land Rover brand of this age, is the buttons start to flake in bits. But all in all, it's worn very well. The bolsters are really nice and clean. The seats are nice and big. They're comfortable. As I say, this one's got the massage function, which is quite nice. But yeah, just what a place to be. Right, so let's get to more of the technical details. As I've mentioned, 275 brake from its 3-litre TDV6 with an 8-speed gearbox, 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. I'm really quite impressed with that because it's 5.25 metres long. That's a long car, that is. That's a lot of car to move to 60 miles an hour or 62 miles an hour in 6 seconds. So that is very good. But also at the same time, you get quite a reasonable economy given, again, the size of the car. So I've got the trip computer. This is trip A, and it's been going for 9,681 miles, and the average MPG that it's got on those 9,607 miles is 38 miles to the gallon. That's not bad. Again, given the level of comfort that you have and the spec and the place that you are, it's a very nice place to be to achieve 0 to 60 in 6 seconds and also 38 miles to the gallon. Brilliant. What an executive, like, long wheelbase saloon car that is. So yeah, very pleased with that. It's £365 a year to tax, which is okay. It's obviously not the best. There are far cheaper cars out there, and people are starting to see the benefit of, obviously, the newer cars that have been registered since 2017. That is now dropping to that lower tax bracket at £180 for the year, because it's been over the 5 years since its first registration. And obviously it's a Euro 5 engine, so it's not ULEZ compliant. That might be a factor to someone on these kind of days, because obviously there are a few more cities and stuff that are implementing this ULEZ zone. But I still think for £7,995, an amazing feat of engineering with a huge level of comfort. There are obviously things to look out for if you are looking for an XJ, and they are the typical car that unfortunately can be bought, and people try to run them on a shoestring budget, which is unfortunate because that means that certain things are missed in terms of maintenance, and if you always try and find the cheapest, it's not always the best. So for example, if you was to get one that didn't have the inlet manifolds replaced and they kept running them after a time after they'd split, that can cause things to gunk up within the engine because it's not getting the fuel mixtures right, and that can cause further issues down the line. This one's also had a transmission service, and again, always recommend it at around 80,000 up to 100,000 to get that kind of transmission serviced. You can always tell different tyre branding and stuff like that if it's got a different make on every corner. Maybe not the most loved car. Always try and get both original keys, because believe it or not, those keys are quite expensive to replace, because it does have that keyless entry and the keyless start technology. So that is worth considering. Make sure it's got 2 keys on that there. So if you can find a well-loved example by someone who's an enthusiast of these executive type cars, you're in for a real winner, because I think you're getting a huge amount of car for the money. But it is also ever so easy to find one that hasn't had certain bits done. Timing belt, obviously it's a nightmare of a job to do on these engines, because you've got one on the front and one on the back. The timing belt, the one that's important to one on the front, but the one on the back is the fuel pump belt, that runs the fuel pump. So you also have to be kind of cautious that that's been done, because as much as that wouldn't break your engine so it can't be used, it's still an inconvenience. It's still a big job to have done. So make sure it's had those bits done, and obviously you can do MOT checks and things like that. But this is just a breath of fresh air. Cannot believe the value of it. Very pleased that it's come in, and I'm going to enjoy driving it for a couple more days before giving it another valet and just leaving it on the forecourt before I start falling too much in love with it and put my own plate on it. But yeah, I mean, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please keep subscribing, and I hope I get more of these cars in. See you for the next one.